book club this month is the Almanack of Naval Ravikant.
I have a
Scott,
question already. I have a question already.
you think it's
Is it,
Naval?
I think it's Naval, but that's beside the point. My question is it book club or is it a specific type of book club?
Oh, like business book club, I think, or just any type of nonfiction. There are a lot of different nonfictions. Like we could go biography or something, but right now, I the goal I think is that we're like trying to get a library 25-cent overdraft fee MBA. Like just read books that MBA people read. Whether or not it's like one to one with the syllabus, I don't care. But
So
I think it's
the,
Naval. Just
that's
going
what I
back.
said. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I said.
you
Naval.
It's
think
called
it's
the
Naval
Navalmanac.
Yeah.
Navalmanac. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is
that's it.
too.
That's it.
Except we have an employee, Shashank, and I said Naval, and he said novel, and I said what? He's like, in India we would say novel. I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't know now. So
Hmm.
we'll
Get
go
from
with
the
Naval
source.
because Navalmanac sounds cooler. I had never heard of this guy before we read his book.
Me
Had,
neither.
had
I've seen pictures of him. Yeah, I just see pictures of him on like Instagram and stuff. But as far as like what he's done in BC, I wasn't super like familiar.
I'll tell
So
you, like, I'm gonna have trouble talking about the book because I went deep into his Twitter and he's still tweeting a storm. So I
Hmm.
can't remember what I learned from
The
the
book.
book and what I learned from just like his Twitter stuff.
How long ago did you read the book?
I just finished it last week. I timed
Okay.
it. I have trouble if I read too many books remembering something in the back. So I'm trying to time it so that it's fresh in my memory when we talk about it.
I just read it this week, so I'm fresh as can be, fresh as a
Okay.
kitten.
Oh, I guess the first question is, did you guys finish it?
I
I think
did.
I have like three-fourths. I was done with three-fourths, so I still have about a quarter left. I'll end up finishing it. I just got busy with school, so
It's a hard thing to finish when there was sometimes a lot to think about. So I would be like, oh, wait, I want to think about how this applies to me and, whether or not I believe it. And if it does, what impact that would have.
Yeah, so
Um,
you're talking about my reading rate. That's something that I always struggle with. Like I can just straight up read it all the way through and I retain a fair amount, but it's not as much as if I had stopped, thought, read some more, stopped, thought, right? Like,
okay.
your type of reading style actually goes with what Naval says though about
yeah,
reading something, and
skimming.
if you don't,
Mhm.
yeah, if you don't get it, or not if you don't get it, but if you don't agree with something, or if you don't really just understand, or you get bored by the reading, you might as well just skip through it. That's something that it was actually nice and refreshing because I've like started books, I'll be like, okay, this is really interesting, and I was like, okay, this sucks, I'm bored, and then you kind of just stall out, and that was nice of just of him saying, "All right, just skip to the middle, or just skip to some part that you like." Because at the end of the day, it's just about, I guess, retaining knowledge from the Vol side, or just learning.
I
Yeah.
totally
And
agree. I totally agree with, and I felt guilty skimming a book or just putting it down. I've always thought like I was kind of a quitter if I did that. But then when he said like your most important resource is your time. And the minute somebody's wasting your time, like he told that story where he would get up after at a dinner party. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
minute he
yeah.
figured
Walk
out that
out.
did he would just walk
Yeah.
out. Yeah, yeah.
I thought he was rude. Yeah.
So maybe if you find the book repetitive or like you're bored, then just, yeah, do that skim. So getting permission to skim was awesome. In fact, we should make that a rule that book club stays the same. And if all three of us didn't finish, use that as a sign. More more telling about the book than about our commitment to the book, right? Like
Yeah.
we're
I
gonna
mean,
have the book club. We only read the first three chapters because it sucked or whatever.
yeah. I mean, I'm gonna have a hard time doing that because like to. I'm one of those people that likes to finish it, likes to check it off, So I'm on his hit list, right? He's one of the
You just
his
agree with
advice
him.
is, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he says, keeping track of the books you read or something like that is like a vanity metric or something like that. But I have to keep track of the books I read. Like otherwise, I'll read them again by accident.
Well,
Like
he would say that's what you want to do is read
yeah,
him again.
yeah, he
I
did.
know he says that, but then I'm like, God, why did I waste all this time? I totally remember the ending now. I get one third of the way through and I'm like, oh, I remember this book now, right? But it took me 1/3 of the way through to remember it, and I should have just checked on my list, and then I wouldn't have had to bother. Anyway, that's how I feel.
He says he would rather read the same 100 high quality books over and over again. Always find new things to read. And
Yeah, I mean, I strike a middle ground there. I mean, I do. If I haven't read a book that I love in about 10 years, I'll reread it. Like, for example, I've read Game of Thrones 4 times.
Oh Lord.
uh, let's see.
but what he said, he uses that in conjunction with his kind of theory that you should always go to the source. Like, don't read modern books on evolution. Like, don't start with Richard Dawkins. Go back to Darwin.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard advice for me to follow
Me too.
because the way they write is not easy to follow sometimes, and sometimes a lot of it is just a given. Like, yeah, I know this already. Maybe reading Adam Smith and Darwin and Voltaire and
Actually started Adam Smith. I believe it's Wealth of Nations. I wasn't
Yeah.
really
yeah.
too into reading. Just when you get into university, they kind of just like push books on you that are like so not interesting and stuff that you really don't like. But just learning the basis of, I guess, economics, it's really important for just any business sense. So I actually stopped reading this book so I could start reading M. Smith. So
Nice.
it pushed
Oh,
me.
there we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Because
So
Yeah. I definitely want to talk
Jorge
about the
loves
reading
finance,
list.
by the way, Scott. Jorge.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about the
I like economics. Like, I think it's cool. In fact, if I had to do it over again, my second major would not have been mathematics. It would have been economics. Absolutely. And I felt like that for probably the last 10 years. When I read stuff about economics, I'm like, oh, that's way more interesting than if I read stuff about math.
Okay,
Are you a
so
math and CS major? Sorry to go off
Yeah.
topic.
yeah, that's what he was. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. If I could go back, I'd switch majors with you.
Yeah, that's what you do. Math and CS. They're really
Math and
related.
CS.
It's not a hard, second major, like because
Yeah.
take so many, there's so much overlap that it's just like a little bit extra here and there to get them.
So I use Naval's advice like pretty regularly now. I mean, his advice is like in my head. So whatever magic he has where he like tells you things and you start doing them is in my head. And one thing that he said, you do what you're passionate about and what you think the right thing is, and the right people will find you. Well, that advice made me make a video last week, and the president of a software company called me today to ask me, look, 40 people watched that video. Like, no one watched it, probably you guys and some friends and employees, and this president of the software company. And he called me, he LinkedIn me, and he said, I would love to have an hour to pick your brain. And literally, he wasn't trying to sell me anything. He was literally trying to pick my brain to see what I thought about that topic because of his investment in this company and where he thinks the company is going. And I gave him some feedback today. Then he said, those are now our top priorities. We'll be implementing that next week.
Jeez.
I just think, Naval, you did it. Like, you told me to make something. You said the right people would find me, and you're totally right.
Yeah. But he also said, if wisdom could be imparted through words alone, we'd be done here. You know what I mean? Like all of this wisdom that he's trying to pass on to us, you actually have to figure it out for yourself. Hearing somebody say it is not going to do a damn thing to you, right? You kind of have to act on it. And that's what you've done. You've taken the first step in acting on it, right?
Yeah. So just to let you know what this almanac is, it's a collection of tweets and interviews and podcasts and things like that Naval has done. And somebody organized it into two sections, wealth and happiness. So I thought the first thing we talk about is the wealth section real quick. So plus that's the section Jorge finished. So is there anything
Actually, the health section I found like really my favorite section, the happiness section. But the wealth section was also really, really cool.
What did you get out of it? Like, what do you think is something that you think resonated with you or is going to change your behavior or that you wrote down in the
Well, I mean, I wrote down a lot of things, but I think we're pretty simpatico on this. Like a lot of the stuff that he was saying in the wealth section, I was like, yeah, I kind of agree. Yep, I agree. So, and we've read stuff related to, like automated income before, Ike, in some of our previous readings, like 4-hour work week or, I think things of that nature. A lot of it for me in this wealth section was yes. I intuitively know that this is true, what you're saying. So it did to your earlier question, lend him a lot of credibility in my mind. So like reading a lot of the things that I already agreed with helped me, take in a lot of the things that maybe I wasn't so aligned on.
Well, obviously, I'm not a business owner. I'm not working yet, but one thing that resonated with me is his use of the word leverage and talking about working super hard does not automatically mean like being as successful as you could be. And my mom is a business owner. And it's always just delegating work that if it's super high of importance, like obviously spend a lot of time on it. But if you could delegate it, delegate it. And that's one thing that it's common misconception. Obviously, like in college, they like work super hard, do all this stuff. But as a business owner, you could delegate a lot of just busy work and it to
Did you
use his
like
word,
that
like
part
use as
where he
leverage.
said, I have a $5,000 hourly rate, and anything below
Yeah.
that, I delegate because it's not worth my hourly rate?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
noted that one specifically and said, something about Ike. Let me search my notes for Ike. Yeah, because I was like, Ike tells me this all the time that I should raise my internal. So this was something that you had said long before,
Yeah.
yeah, this is straight from Ike. He's always trying to get me to increase my hourly rate. Yeah, set and enforce an aspirational personal hourly rate. Yeah.
The thing that I loved, so I usually say yes to every opportunity, and that gets me in trouble because I get overwhelmed and stressed and upset. And the one I remember that had an immediate impact is if you have to make a pros and cons list, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Like if you're not absolutely excited about who you're working with and the work you're doing and the opportunity it presents to you, if everything isn't totally what you want to be doing, the answer is no. And we Scott and I have discovered that as we've hired people, like we've sent out job ads and we've had 10, 20, 50 people respond. And at the end of it, we didn't want to hire anybody. Maybe there was a best candidate. Maybe there was one candidate where we're like, this one's better than everybody else, but we're still not that excited. Who needs to be fired is us, because probably we wrote the ad wrong, or we used a wrong venue, or we didn't use the right tools, or we didn't say the right thing, or we didn't research or think, or something happened, but we needed to go back and reframe what we were looking for so that we get the right people. So similar, if you have to make a pros and cons list, just the answer is no. Like you shouldn't have to do that. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, kind of agree with that. If you're trying to make a decision to pull the trigger, a leap, right? But
Yeah.
if you're faced with a fork in the road where you have to decide right or left, then a pros and cons list is a good thing to do.
Meaning
And
if we had
then,
two good candidates to hire, right? Two
yeah, yeah,
perfectly
yeah.
good candidates to
But we
hire,
could
which one do
only
we hire, right?
afford one. Which one do
Right.
we take? Yeah, exactly. That's where
Okay.
a pros and cons list makes sense. And
Totally
then
fair.
he did also say something, I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, and I'm not sure if I captured it, but it was something like you're choosing the one that has the most danger or pain in the short term, but has the most benefit in the long term, right?
Oh, he
That's the
is that part where he said play long-term games with long-term people?
maybe, yeah, yeah, could have been. I
Made
mean,
me go for a run this morning, actually.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
did
Yeah,
it?
nice.
yeah, it said
Yeah.
you're pretty much not owed anything in life. And I always thought that way. I was instilled in me since I was a kid. It's nobody owes you anything, not even family, friends. Nobody owes you anything. A lot of times people take short-term satisfaction over. It's always the work hard now and play later, or play now and just work till you die. That was pretty cool. That was a nice part.
That is what you learned from the wealth section. What about the happiness section?
Don't get backwards. Everybody tries going. What was the order? It was like wealth,
Oh
health, and
yeah.
then happiness. He
Yeah. We
said
we
go
seek them in that
happiness.
order,
Yeah.
but the importance is the other way around. Yeah. I
He's
really like
like
that quote.
he's like if you can't. He starts off every day, I guess, with working out, and it doesn't matter like how long he works out for, as long as he starts it. He says the day is automatically better, and that helped with productivity. It just helped with a lot of aspects in his life, and I thought that was
Oh,
something that a
that
lot of
part,
people could do.
that part when he said, I start working out and I don't know how long it will take, but I don't leave the gym until I'm done, until I've worked out. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of most people have like a routine or they have like a plan or goals, but he's like eliminated that. He just shows up at the gym and he leaves when he feels like he worked out.
Yeah. He also said the world could be on fire or imploding or something like that. I forget the word that he used specifically, but like there could be all these emergencies and whatever, and it doesn't matter to him. He's going to go, he's going to work out, he's going to stay as long as it takes to work out, and then he's going to deal with all of the emergencies. Whereas in my own life, definitely until now, if there's been some sort of emergency or something, I've been like, oh, well, I'll do the gym later. That's how I operate. But I should probably flip those priorities, right?
I
Yeah.
mean, I did tell you that.
Yeah.
I have told you that many times where you're like, I'm working 12-hour days. And I said, are you sure it wouldn't be 8-hour days if you worked out first? And then you could
Yeah.
figure out a path to the 8-hour
So
day.
the hard part for me about in the morning is I always had like kids, like dropping off and whatever. And then I'd get to like, if I'm working out downtown in the building that we work from, then it'd be like driving there. I'd get there late. I'd go work out, then I'd have to shower, and it's like a process, right? I think if it was like a home gym or something like that, then I feel like I could do it early in the morning. But it's hard, like getting up, getting dressed, go to the gym, do the workout, shower, come home, whatever, then go to work, right? That's the hard part for me.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I didn't even have kids. Well, hopefully I don't have kids, but yeah. Since it takes me about 40 minutes to get to school, I'll wake up like at 6:30 and do my whole thing, and then I'll get here by 9. I have class from 9 to 12, and then I'll often stay till like 7 or 8. So I'm having like very long days, and I'll do that probably like 4 or 5 times a week. I haven't played golf in like 2 weeks, dude. This is like super depressing, by the way. But after reading like the book, I was like, you know what? I'm not owed anything. Good reminder. So that's why I went for a run today. And I was like, okay, now that that's out of the way, now I have like the rest of the day just to go do my stuff. And then now I get to prioritize sleep because lately I've been going to sleep at like 1 o'clock, midnight, and I'm waking up at like 6. So not great sleep. And it starts just affecting everything else.
Okay, I have
True.
a question. So Naval says he gets a lot of sleep. He says he works out every day. He says he reads for 1 or 2 hours a day.
A
And then he
lot.
says he meditates. And I can't remember how long he meditates for. Do you think he meditates for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour?
Sure,
He
let's say
said
30
hour.
minutes. Yeah, okay, say an hour. So
Like
there you go.
that's a
Yeah.
large part of the time of the
Mm-hmm.
day eaten away by his routine.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, it doesn't strike me as sustainable.
Yeah, I
I
guess
agree.
if you have automated income, going back to the wealth section, then why wouldn't it be sustainable? Like you're making enough money to live, right? The
Yeah.
only reason you work is to set other automatable processes up so that you make even more, right? Like there's no, he says he just works for play, right? For fun, right? It's only if you have to work in order to like make enough money to live that you have this issue, like where it's not sustainable because there's not enough time.
Okay, if you run out of time, what's the first of those things that's going to fall away? Like workout, meditate, sleep, or what was the other one? It was reading, his reading for 1 or 2 hours. So
Well, I
if you
don't
get busy,
meditate. I don't meditate, so that one I don't even have. But I would say sleep generally for me is the one that falls by the wayside.
I'd say sleeping and reading. I meditate everywhere. Probably meditate like 20 or 30 minutes a day.
do
But
you
like I
really?
should probably just well yeah, it's nice just I'll do it when I'm stuck behind a computer. I'll just be on Excel for like 3, 4 hours. Then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I've just been here too long. I'll go stand outside. I'll listen to like low volume music and I'll just go sit in the sun or just chill or just sit in silence. And usually that's when a lot of times like the stuff I'm struggling on just kind of just comes to me. So it's more just like peace and quiet than I guess meditating. I guess he goes over that in the book, like whatever thoughts, it's almost like you enter a flow state where thoughts come in and out of your head. You're not really thinking or trying to grasp onto stuff.
Yeah, I don't
I found it
meditate.
useful.
I do take lots of breaks from my work. And it is true in those breaks, I tend to think of solutions that are more direct than what I was doing, right? Like,
So do you think Naval was credible? Like, do you think all this advice he's given us, like by the end of your reading, did you feel like yeah, this advice is worth following, and he knows what he's talking about, and he's developed expertise on this.
I absolutely did. Yeah. I think, as I said, it was helped by the fact that for the first part of the book, I was like, yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. Well said. Yes. So I think that in my mind gave him a lot of credibility.
Yeah, I think also on the happiness side, something that he talks about is death. And it's something that a lot of people don't like talking about. But I also read Meditations just recently, Marcus Aurelius, and
Which
he
he
talks
mentions
about
in the
death.
book. He mentions Marcus Aurelius.
Oh,
Yeah.
I must have just, I don't know if
I don't remember that part. So yeah,
yeah, I don't remember that either.
could have
But
been a tweet, Ike.
No, it
could
wasn't.
have been
It
a
was in his
tweet.
recommended book list, which I highly
Oh,
recommend you look at.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But yeah, like something that a lot of people, I talked to my parents about this, I talked to my friends about it. It says I think it's a Buddhist teaching where you have two lives. The second one starts when you realize that you only have one. And a lot of times, like stuff that I stress about all the time, I think, okay, in the past, I've stressed about stuff so much and none of it actually came true, or what if it did come true, wasn't that impactful. So I found it really cool that somebody else is talking about death in a way of, okay, it's going to happen to everybody. Everybody's going to die. Even if you don't want to, I think a, a fatal flaw that humans have is that a lot of times we think we're immortal. We won't stop working or we won't stop doing something because we think, oh, we'll have plenty of time to do other stuff. And I think it ruins relationships. It just ruins productivity because you just think you could do stuff forever. And it was cool, like seeing somebody else talk about it.
He actually quotes that exact quote. That's the quote he quoted from Meditations. Um, awesome. Okay. Any final thoughts on this book? So the last question is, would you recommend this book for other people to read?
Yes.
Yeah, no
Yeah, me too.
sugarcoating.
My only irritating part, it was slightly irritating, is I feel like he speaks very black and white, like this is right, this is wrong. And at the beginning, that was very appealing to me. But by the end, I'm like, wow, he's given me a lot of black and white advice. I hope, there doesn't strike me as very much nuance sometimes. That's my
There was
only kind
one
of
piece of
small criticism. But
there was one piece of advice where I understand like the whole black and white like thing, but where I kind of thought that, or one section of the book when he's talking about just understanding the basics of how do I say this? Like understand the basics of things you're interested in. Like when he was talking about
The
economics, he brought up Adam
fundamentals.
Smith. Yeah, the
Yeah.
fundamentals, excuse me. He's talking about Adam Smith and he goes, and then he talks about socialism and Karl Marx. Is that how you say
Mm-hmm.
it? Karl Marx.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
And
Yeah.
he says that's something that I don't necessarily believe in, but if you're interested in it, you might as well go to the fundamentals of where it started. And I think that's a fantastic piece of advice for anything,
Yeah.
even golf. Yeah, even golf.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't believe somebody else's interpretation of it. Um, so are you guys ready to hear about the next book? I'm going to pick the next book and maybe we'll rotate. We'll let you guys pick the books after that. But I already picked the next book. Do you guys want to hear about it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, wait.
so
Actually, hold on. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the reading list because that is kind of the
oh
third
yeah.
section
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
book.
yeah. Yeah.
But then yes. So let's see. He said, yeah, what's interesting is you had used the word business, and I was just looking through the stuff that I had written down, and I said this one I would be curious to see what Ike says about this. It's in the wealth part, and it says there's no skill called business. Avoid business magazines, books, and classes. So it's interesting that we're a business book club, but Naval has already told us that we shouldn't be reading business books. But I guess if we define it a little bit more broadly as, you know,
Skills.
things that help us in
Self help.
business. Yeah, exactly. Things that help us in business, then we can keep going.
Well, he
But
can say there's no such skill as business, but look, I've met people who are really good at reading a financial statement and people who are very bad at it. And I've met
Mhm.
people who are really good at understanding a problem to a process immediately and people who are really bad at it. And in MBAs, like, Scott, you and I read like Lean Thinking, we read Thinking in Systems, we read the all the different manufacturing books and all the different
Mhm.
accounting books and like yeah, it comes up a lot. Like those skills come up a lot. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure what I think his point was, I agree with his point, and I think his point is you have a skill, you can learn business along the way, right? You don't need to develop business as a skill before you start a business. You can do your work and market it and get it out there, and you will make mistakes and you will learn on the way. And I think he's right about that. But I also believe that if you couple that with learning from other people who've gone first, it will accelerate you. But it's no just because you don't have the business background shouldn't stop you from starting it. You know,
Right. Yep.
you're plenty smart to go start and do your own thing right now.
Yeah. And then another thing that he said was the things you should study, like I think this was in the wealth section, but it's kind of reflected in his reading list at the end, which is like microeconomics, game theory, psychology, persuasion,
Statistics.
yeah, mathematics, statistics, computers, stuff like that.
Uh,
And I have never read a microeconomics book. I don't even know of one. I searched his reading list. He didn't have one mentioned there. So I would be curious, if anybody has one that they would recommend.
Seems like
Um,
that's something that you need to research and choose in your time to
okay.
choose.
All right.
Because
Maybe.
I'm down for that.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
my, yeah, I'm down to learn about microeconomics. I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
I love all that shit.
He did have a couple in game theory and psychology. I actually think both Ike and myself are pretty well read because of that. The books that we read earlier. There were a lot of those in there.
And I'm happy to reread those.
Yeah, like if it's a classic, like I still remember Made to Stick, like
It's
all
really
the
good.
time. Yeah, that was a really good one. Did we read a persuasion book?
Yeah, The Art of Persuasion.
The Art of Persuasion. I
Yeah,
don't know if I remember that one.
it's behind me.
Um, oh, okay, cool.
Um, okay, so the next book. So, okay, Scott and I are part of a startup, and we've done consulting our whole career, and we've consulted with startups, but we never really were part of our own startup. And this startup, every startup has like highs and lows and shaky time. And we've definitely had highs and lows already. And it's made us question what we know and understand about startups. So there's a major venture capital fund called Andreessen Horowitz. And these are the guys that started Netscape, but they also did several other startups where they made billions of dollars. Um, and Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz wrote a book 2 years ago called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And it's about his experience in business and in the startup culture. And it has 13,000 reviews on Amazon, 4.5 stars. So I thought that was a pretty good endorsement. So I think our next book is going to be The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And we'll pick a date and we'll review it. Does that sound good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
We'll learn more
Hard
about
sounds good.
things.
startup culture. And then it sounds like Scott might pick an economics book, and who knows what Jorge is going to pick.